Welcome to Graceless Crimes. My name is Grace. This is my YouTube channel. I have not recorded in like 6 months, but we're back. We are not better than ever. We're exhausted, but we're still here. If you don't know my channel, if you're new to my channel and you like true crime, you like crazy stories, a little bit of conspiracy stories mixed in, then please hit like, comment, subscribe. I'm trying to put out as many videos as I can, but we're back on the ball. So, hello. First and foremost, love the new shirt, not merch, but somebody very important to me has passed away, and this is kind of my way of talking to her about true crime. She was my true crime bestie, my auntie, so this is kind of a outline of her uh, cute little face, and it says true crime baddie like my aunties. Definitely had some technical difficulties today, so I'm just like, let me get this out. This case has been on everybody's mind. I have literally lost sleep over this case because I am a child of the ASL, internet, and a mother of girls. And so it's like how this happened is beyond us all. And the way it happened is just kind of a nightmare. Hopped up on coffee. That's kind of all I've had today, and a donut. So bear with me here. The last we left off was on the Celeste Rivas Hernandez case. She was a young girl who was found in the trunk of the car of a pretty well-known or up-and-coming singer, Fortnite star named David Anthony Burke. The body was actually found September 8th, 2025, which was a day after what would have been her 15th birthday. And so a lot of speculation swirled around the case. There was a lot of rumors. There was a lot of what if it wasn't him? What if it was him? And so we're finally on the other side of things. An arrest was made, and hopefully her friends and family will see justice and we can kind of just put this guy away. But I don't think that this case is ever going to be put to bed. In my opinion, which I'll give at the end, this case is bigger than we realize. So we're going to get started with a quick background of the case so we can start on present day. You know, I have my screen in front of me just so I can read along with some notes that I have. And then at the end, I will get to the actual opinion part of it all. So this is a parent's worst nightmare. That is not an opinion. That is a fact. You know, your kid leaves home. You don't know where they are. You don't know who they're with. Or you might know who they're with, but you don't feel like you have enough control over the situation and you don't want to make things worse. So a quick recap of the case is Celeste Rivas Hernandez is 14 years old. She had been reported missing in the past. I believe the last time she was reported missing was around February to April of 2024 was the last missing persons report. I'll put it up on the screen. We have looked at this already in my previous video. Now, Celeste was from Lake Elsinore. She was found in the trunk of a Tesla, the front trunk of a Tesla, in September of 2025 in the Hollywood Hills, which is about an hour and a half away from her home. You know, the condition of her remains was really bad, and so we did know from earlier reports that she was identified from her dental records, and the investigators couldn't really determine basic details. Now, what makes this case interesting and what made it kind of sensationalized as well, besides the gruesome nature of her death, was that there was a real lag in terms of the arrest. Obviously, speculation is the person who owns the car is the person who committed the crime, but innocent until proven guilty, I suppose. We now have an autopsy report, an arrest report, and the preliminary hearing affidavit, and I want to read all that because it is like, you'll see why at the end I lost so much goddamn sleep. From the beginning, there was all these rumors that she wasn't the same girl in the photos with David, that, you know, she was living a double life and she had connections to somebody in the industry. There were so many rumors about her parents' involvement. They knew, they let her do it, they sent her over there. And so it doesn't really make sense to me because none of this really excuses what happened to her. And all the chaos now kind of has a lot more information to it. And unfortunately for all of us who are, you know, watching this case and, you know, going to be following the trial, hopefully if there is a trial, the more that we learn about this case, the worse that it becomes. I almost wish we were all wrong, but I've never seen so many Reddit threads and rumor mills actually come to light, which also raises another question about how many people actually knew about this relationship. And we'll use that word very loosely. April 16th comes around 2026, and we finally get an arrest. D4vd, which is David's pen name, or David Anthony Burke, his birth name, was arrested, and he was in the Hollywood Hills. Now, his family is from Texas. They had originally been from Queens. They moved to Texas when he was in the 6th or 7th grade, and they've been living in Texas ever since. So there was an assumption that while this investigation was dragging on, that this kid was in Texas. Well, apparently, this kid's ballsy enough to stay in Hollywood Hills. I guess he thought he was untouchable. So there is footage of him being arrested. They're asking him to open the gate. SWAT is there. You can hear a copter, but I don't know if that copter was with the police. He's arrested on Thursday the 16th, and then there was a press conference on Monday where the charges were officially announced. Got a few details that, again, like the more you know, the more you don't want to know. And also the more you know, the more questions come about. It's like, I just feel like I'm in a horror film and I'm not even the parent. I'm not even the family involved. And I'm like, I don't want to know anything else. Like, please let this be all the details, but we know that's not true. So first and foremost, so Monday the press conference happens. The charges are that she was actually brought to his home in the Hollywood Hills, that the incident occurred there on April 23rd of 2025. The police being very definitive in the day in which she died is interesting to me, because that means that they can say with certainty that it happened on that day. How they can say with certainty is a couple of different things, including where he was, the traveling that he did before and after the crime, and then, of course, digital evidence and data. So that was super interesting to me. Now, David was on tour in July of 2025. April of 2025, he releases his album, Withered, and there's all this footage of him. Remember, these kids are all internet kids. They make their livelihood on the internet. They're on TikTok, they're on Instagram. I mean, every place you can think of, they are there. And so the 23rd date is really important, especially to the investigators, and they are dead set that this is the date in which Celeste was killed by David. Now, the charges are super interesting. Count one is lying in wait, which is considered when you plan, wait, lure, and or ambush an individual with the intent of harm. I've never heard of lying in wait, but to be lying in wait in your own damn house is like diabolical. Like, I don't understand that one. The other counts are even more interesting. Committing a crime for financial gain. So prosecution is alleging that David had billions of streams, which he did, and that he killed Celeste because the theory was that she was going to expose the relationship and end his career. And the third count is eliminating a potential witness in an investigation. And so they're saying that David was privy to the fact that Celeste was a witness in an active investigation. Now, to date, I have not heard what that active investigation was, but there's speculation that there was some sort of connection between Celeste's relationship with him, and there might have been other girls around her age that were dating him, and I think investigation was looking into it. Once I read the preliminary hearing affidavit, you'll see why it makes sense that there might have been some sort of an investigation going on. That also brings me to the whole, did the LAPD and the FBI have, alignment? Were they in lockstep, which is a term you're going to hear a lot, or were they completely battling each other? And I wonder if it's because they wanted to be sure that he was the one, but also to cover up the fact that if there was an investigation prior and they weren't on top of that shit, then somebody fucked up somewhere and they're trying to find a way to make sure it all is seamless. Again, that's my own theory, but I don't really see why the FBI and LAPD would be at odds when it's a child that went missing. Like, okay. So on Thursday, the Deputy District Attorney Beth Silverman, which was on the 16th when the arrest happened, revealed that the investigators got a wiretap on David's phone as a part of their probe, and that there were 3 grand juries that I've heard separate things like, oh, they were secret, but they weren't. They were actually investigative, not to indict, but only convened to investigate the case. Um, Deputy District Attorney said that the panels were held November, December, and February, and that's where you see all of these conversations about David's friends, like this kid Neo, who was arrested because he didn't show up to the investigative grand jury, and also just a voluminous amount of data. So they're saying that despite 5 weeks of work, LAPD investigators have uploaded only about 30% of the evidence into a digital system accessible to the defense. The rumor is, so far, that there's 40 terabytes of information, digital information on this kid and all his crimes. Um, he was born in 2010, I want to say. Was he born in 2010? No, sorry. He was born in 2015. He was born in 2015, which I'm like, people were born in 2015? Like, anyway, I was like, don't worry about how old I was, but I was not being born in Romania in 2015, and she was born in 2005. And so I've seen some theories about the kind of digital evidence that's on his phone or whatever computers. And so folks online are like, well, no, because they were kind of the same age. Like, no. First of all, the age of consent in California has been 18 since 1920. I looked it up. You can look it up to your own research. Now, the other problem is, if there was a consent age, there's also something called Romeo and Juliet law, which allows for kids to be like dating within a 4-year span. So if you're 14, you can date an 18-year-old. It depends on the state and the age of consent and the Romeo and Juliet laws. Now, unfortunately, there's none. And again, they were not 4 years apart anyway. He was 5 years and 5 months older than her. So when he met her, she was much younger than him. And we're going to get into how old this little girl was when he met her on the goddamn internet. Okay. Now, this is really interesting to me is originally a lot of the information that was coming out was coming from a private investigator named Stephen Fisher. Stephen Fisher was hired by the owner and landlord of the apartment. David seemed to have just fucking bounced. When the body was found in September, by the end of September, he had cleaned house and left. And then investigators came in and they pulled data from the house. They got computers and all this stuff. What was interesting was the fact that he left and he left all this shit behind. So when the private investor comes to the house, he goes through all this stuff and he has stated that within 24 hours he handed everything over to the LAPD and the FBI, including a camera with photos of her on it and all of this other stuff, right? There was like pills, there was all kinds of stuff. And everybody was just like, okay, so if all this data has been left behind, all this evidence, like what is left? And the private investigator was talking in very vaguely. I think he didn't know what he could and couldn't say. So he was saying very much of nothing. And so it just kind of felt like nothing was going to happen for, I mean, almost 6 months. Now, one of the things that he found was a high heat burning device, which can be considered something like an incinerator. And from my research, certain types of incinerators are not even legal in the state of California. So he's already getting to a place where he's in trouble for certain things that they're finding, right? Probable cause, they walk in the house, they seize for other things. Now you're in more trouble, okay? But the private investigator, Stephen Fisher, had early estimated that Celeste was last alive January or February because those are the last times that photos were found of her. And he was slightly off, but close. Now, from what we know, it's probably because they broke up because they're in a relationship, 20-year-old and a 14-year-old. And that's probably why the photos were not there. So I'm going to talk about the key dates and movement, and then I'm going to go and read the affidavit really quick and also give you the full medical report with photos and everything. Okay, first and foremost, April 2025 is the estimated time of death for Celeste Rivas Hernandez. David was in wherever, the desert. I don't really care, but he was performing at Coachella. He performs at Coachella in April, and then there's this short window of time where he's home. And after that, he is seen in various different places. So he releases his album April 23rd, the night of April 23rd, morning of April 24th. He's at parties celebrating the album release. He's releasing TikToks. He's making memes. He's being funny. He's having a haha kiki. But mind you, meanwhile, they're saying he killed that girl that day. So when we're going to put some of the clips in here and some of the photos so we can see how this person that's being accused of probably one of the worst crimes, homicide crimes we've ever witnessed. And this is, I'm not saying this lightly. It's pretty horrific. Now, the authorities are saying that he didn't dismember her until May 5th. April 24th, he's at the party. He does the album release party. See him dancing and kikiing. I'm sure people went back to his house, all of that. And then April 25th, he does some sort of a performance, like kind of an unplugged situation. He's sitting on a stool or a chair, and he's performing a song, and he breaks down crying. And it's like he's sobbing, crying. And it's just kind of out of place. But again, you know, the fans are probably like, oh my God, he's so passionate, he's so emotional. No, he just fucking killed his like teenage girlfriend that he wasn't supposed to be dating, and she's still in his house. Like, don't stop me from bleeding, but I buy all I can as I try. So we're going to read the affidavit and then we're going to go through some of this. Now, the affidavit is a people's brief regarding preliminary hearing evidence released on April 29th, 2026. And in this, there's some background facts where they talk about Celeste and how she was found. We can now verify and confirm that she was unfortunately found dismembered in the front trunk of this Tesla. She was found in two separate bags, one being a cadaver bag that was actually purchased, and a what looks like some sort of a trash bag where her limbs were cut up in, I believe, 7 pieces, 6 or 7 pieces. The vehicle had been towed from the home he was renting, which was at 1368 Doheny Place in Hollywood Hills. And there's surveillance video and other evidence confirming that David Anthony Burke was the last person to drive that vehicle on July 29th, 2025, before he left to go on tour for this album release. September 8th was when the tow yard manager noticed a strong smell, and they called the LAPD detectives, which they came and found a black cadaver bag covered in insects. Inside the bag, they discovered a severely decomposed head and torso. A plastic garbage bag beneath the black cadaver bag contained the dismemberment, arms, and legs. Now, the victim's ring and pinky fingers on her left hand were not found at the scene. As you remember from the last video, she actually had a tattoo on her left ring finger that had David on it, and there was like a photo with a ring on it. I'll put pictures in here. The fingers have never been recovered or have not yet been recovered. The only way they were able to positively identify the body was from the dental records belonging to the victim. If we go to the autopsy report, what we're going to see is a couple of things. There's severe postmortem changes, meaning she was incredibly decomposed, from the April 23rd date to the July 29th date when he leaves the car and goes on tour. We're not certain where she was kept or held, but we do know that from that July 29th date all the way to September, she was most likely in the back of that trunk, in Hollywood, in a closed trunk, in a bag, and then also the heat and the elements. So you can only imagine the decomposition of this poor child's body. From what we can tell, she was killed with 2 penetrating wounds to the torso, right abdomen, with an injury to her liver, and also the left chest, penetrating on her ribs. the medical examiner could not determine the eye color. They could not determine her skin color, um, and any like features because she was so severely decomposed. Her unfortunately head was skeletonized and there was an eye missing. Um, that's important to the case for multiple reasons. It shows how long she had been left. It also makes you wonder if the eye was intentionally removed or not. I will get into some of the connection with anime and why I think maybe he took the eye and the fingers on purpose. Now, they were not able to identify this poor baby girl's body, but for the braces that were still on her teeth, which also give you how young she was. Like, ridiculous. Now, her original height and weight was 120 pounds, but she was 71 pounds when found based on decomposition and her extremities being removed from her body. Now, a couple of things that could not be determined was if she was ever with child or pregnant at some point. Usually they're able to determine that by the size of your uterus, but they can say for certain that they don't know if it was or wasn't. They're basing it off of text messages and conversations that were had with David, which we'll get into as well. But what they did find on the medical report were traces of benzodiazepines. There was ethanol present, which is alcohol, in her liver. However, I don't know if that was considered actual alcohol that was ingested, or if it was from decomp, because your body does release certain gases and fluids during decomposition. They also discovered methamphetamine and MDMA, which is Molly, and then they didn't find much else drug-wise in her system. But again, this kid is 14 years old. Well, we shouldn't be finding anything anywhere. We should be home with our parents. And this case is like, I'm trying to get through because I want to get through the affidavit so you can really hear what all was going on. Now, we are looking at the autopsy report. They do show the 2 wounds that are present like on the front of her body. We have a lot of other information here, which I'll just put on the screen. And I won't get into all the details just because of YouTube. And of course, they have some really strict guidelines here. Now, other things that are interesting is that she was wearing a tube top, underwear, leggings, and socks. And there were holes in the front and back of the top, maybe just from like tears. But what was interesting to me anyway was that the place in which she was cut with the pants on. So the leggings were cut and kind of rolled down at the feet, which means the pieces of her body that were in another bag had some clothing on them as well. So I found that to be really interesting just because I wanted this thing to be something that was done in haste. But when you read the damn affidavit, you know that this boy planned this. And it's like when you saw the autopsy report, you're like, oh, well, maybe he freaked and no. We can't even give this kid the benefit of the doubt. During his arrest, he doesn't really look like he gives a shit. He looks actually really calm. I've watched some videos of some body language experts, and he doesn't look like he's really believes that he's gonna get in trouble, which goes back to like him still being in the Hollywood Hills. I think he had transferred all his property to his parents at some point earlier on, but it was interesting that he kind of was like very calm, very chill. Reports say that he asked for a haircut and asked for street clothes, which they told him like, go scratch, you can wear what you wear. And he kind of is like there's clips of him just like kind of like being like listening, like he's just watching a TV show. Like, I don't know. It seems like he's there for a traffic ticket. It doesn't give, I'm going to jail for life, and possibly DP because California has death penalty, baby. So I don't know what he thinks all is going on, but he's to snap into reality. So it says that LAPD robbery and homicide detectives determined the victim and defendant met in January of 2022 when defendant was 18 and she was 13. That was when they began a relationship in November 2023. So that means this baby girl was 11 years old when she started talking to this man, or whatever, 16, 17-year-old on the interwebs. Okay, so my stomach, like I feel like I can feel my anyway. Now, the defendants had learned the victim had been reported missing to the Riverside County Sheriff's Department by her family, who live in Lake Elsinore, in February and April of 2024. RCSD, who is the county department, so the county department called the defendant, David, on February 17, 2024, because they found a phone number in the victim's phone records that belonged to him. So they called this motherfucker on the phone. And they were like, hey, bitch, do you know where this little girl is? And he was like, I spoke to her like the 14th or the 15th, 13th or the 14th of February. I don't know that I didn't know she was a minor. I didn't know she was reported missing. Okay. So they actually go to his house. LA Sheriff Department go to his house. And he was living at 804 North Doheny Place in West Hollywood. So he had a different apartment. So they come to his house. They do a welfare check at 8 o'clock at night. And he says he only met her once in November 2023 in person. Doesn't know her, never heard of her. So November 2023, she would have been just turned 13. However, this dumb David freaking shows his phone to the deputies, and he's like, oh, I have like a yearbook photo of her. He claimed to be unaware of where the victim was at the time, but 2 days after this all went down, she appears back home. Okay. Now, law enforcement told him the victim was only 13, so he was informed. And it says defendant continued to pursue her. There was an email sent from his management to him saying, hey, this girl's a runaway, you need to like not hang out with her, she's 13, yeah. There's also proof, according to reports, that he knew she was 13, not only from the email, but from this, and that he read those emails, and still, as this states, continued to pursue her. After the victim returned home in February of 2024, her parents took her cell phone away. Defendant drove to Lake Elsinore and paid a junior high school student in the victim's class $1,000 to give the victim a cell phone that defendant purchased so they could stay in contact, which is where those photos of David in Lake Elsinore come from. There's photos of him seemingly handing folks money. Folks have this determined where he was standing was but 0.3 or 0.4 miles away from her home. Those are the moments in which that happened. And so they continue to stay in contact. Now, it says throughout 2024, victim spent significant amount of time with defendant, including summer weekends at his home in the Hollywood Hills and traveling with him to Las Vegas, London, and Texas to meet his family. Now, I thought they meant London, Texas, because Texas does have a city named Paris. So I was like, maybe they mean, like, because I'm trying to understand how a 13-year-old without parental permission is getting on a plane and is not in the country with this individual. There are also explicit photos documenting and corroborating their sexual relationship. They're saying that there's CSAM of him and her, photos of her, a child, and possibly other children in that 40 terabytes. I said that they can't figure out how to freaking download. They don't know what to do. Now, it says in November 2024, defendant and victim broke up, although they continued to communicate, and text messages suggest they also have continued to have sexual relations. So that's why there weren't that many photos of her on that camera that Steve Fisher found. It seems like the conversation, relationship, whatever you want to call it, the grooming was weaning off. Now, April 23rd of 2025 is likely the date of the victim's death because all her cellular activity ceased. The night prior, April 22nd, defendant and victim engaged in a lengthy argument describing in detail in their text messages. So they get into a fight on text, And victim Celeste Rivas reveals jealousy over, his relationships with other women and girls. I say girls, the thing says women. It says led her to believe they had a future together. So it says she becomes extremely upset, threatens to disclose damaging information about her relationship with defendant to end his career and destroy his life. This is where they get all that information about elimination of a witness is one of the charges. Elimination is such a strong word, but that's how they kind of phrase it, because his album was to be released the 25th of April. This is the 23rd. It says he had an emerging multi-million-dollar career already in progress, and he had multiple product endorsements which were highly profitable. So at 8:40 p.m. on the 23rd of April, defendant sends an Uber all the way to Lake Elsinore to transport this girl to his house. They communicate before and during her Uber ride, and she's dropped off the defendant's Hollywood Hills home around 10:10 p.m. It takes her an hour and a half to get to his house, and then at 10:30, 20 minutes after her Uber arrives, David starts sending texts to her phone, like, hey, where you at? Like, what's going on? Prosecution is saying this was all bullshit. He knew obviously where she was. He knew she was dead at that point, or at least bleeding out. And so he was trying to cover up his tracks. They're thinking that very soon after her arrival, he stabbed the victim to death multiple times and stood by while she bled out. At no time did he call law enforcement or 911 or take her to emergency room to attempt to save her life. Now, it says, despite knowing she was dead and her family trying to find her, evidence will show defendant lied and claimed he didn't know where she was. In fact, defendant drives to Santa Barbara County immediately after the victim dies, attempting to dispose of her property and destroy evidence. There was conversations as well about a trip to Santa Barbara, but what I need to know is, were people with him? Because it seems as though there may have been folks with him on that Santa Barbara trip, which is another opposite direction of where he lives and is quite far, and he comes back because the Tesla has recordings of everywhere you go and everything you do. So at 11:30, he drives away from his house and he's texting and calling her phone, asking where she is. They're saying these are calculated acts and planned to set up his defense within a very short timeline after the victim's murder. He drove his Tesla north onto the 101 freeway all the way to San Marcos Pass Road in Santa Barbara County and returned home early the following morning on April 24th before going on a damn radio interview for the release of his album. Then he sent 2 additional texts to the victim's phone, which obviously went unanswered because she was already dead. After April 26, 2025, defendant never attempted to contact her again. This motherfucker decides, since, I gotta keep covering my tracks because I'm in some sort of SDU episode and nothing is fucking real because I've created a world outside of myself and I don't think this person's a human being, because that's what it gives, because he's an idiot. The next fucking day, so he kills her on the 23rd. Drives around to Santa Barbara, trying to figure out what he's going to do with her stuff, with her, who knows. Comes back, showers, goes on a radio interview that day, then goes on HomeDepot.com, on Postmates, and orders a shovel. Now, all this time goes by, because again, remember, he's doing an album release, he's going places. Again, I'm going to put clips of where he was between the 24th of April, when he is ordering a shovel, and May 1st, when he orders from Amazon 2 chainsaws. My God, today. He orders 2 chainsaws, and then on the 5th of May, it says he ordered a body bag and heavy-duty laundry bags and a blue inflatable pool. Now, on the autopsy report, the places where she was severed were actually showed it like blue plastic on it, and I had the assumption it was like blue tarp or something, but I couldn't figure out why blue tarp would get on her. But again, I wasn't thinking, because I'm not in the mind of a maniac, but I was just trying to hypothesize, and my hypothesis was wrong, baby, because he's a fucking lunatic. And what they're saying is he used the pool to kind of like do what he did so he wouldn't make a mess. How thoughtful. Let's see. Oh, he made the purchases for the Amazon under a fake name. I guess he thought that would work. Again, like, dumber people are walking around this earth. I tell myself that every day. And then he goes back to that area in Santa Barbara County, where it's like desert, it's very desolate, on May 8th. And then he's gone. He's in Paris. There's like pictures of him. He's traveling, he's doing his tour, pre-sale, and also like getting ready for the tour, which started July 29th. Interestingly enough, he goes back on May 31st. And in January of 2026, the investigators find her passport card over there. So he was trying to dump her shit, or maybe make it look like she ran away somewhere else. I don't know. Again, not the mind of a fucking lunatic. Now, January 7th, 2025, he also goes on Amazon again and orders a burn cage under a fake name as part of the plan to incinerate evidence. Based on what Steve Fisher says, though, I don't think he ever used the burn cage. I don't think it was like in use or anything, but it was purchased and it was in his house. And again, I'm pretty sure that that's against the law to have something of that nature in certain states. Essentially, he placed her body in an inflatable pool to prevent her blood from spilling onto his garage floor, and then used a chainsaw and other tools to cut off her limbs. Small blue plastic fragments were found embedded in the victim's remains that were collected by the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner. The expert was able to make a physical fit match from the blue fragments to the blue inflatable pool purchased by the defendant. And also, they're saying again that he amputated the left pinky finger and the ring finger to distance himself because her ring finger contained a tattoo of his name. What's interesting too is like, on the medical report, they did touch DNA. They swabbed the handles of the bag and they swabbed the zipper, and they were able to get some touch DNA. They have yet to say it was his DNA, but I'm sure that will come out as evidence kind of rolls out. Obviously, then he puts her in the trunk. We don't know yet what happened between April 23rd when she was killed and July 29th. When she was put in the car. Was she in a freezer, like reports had stated prior? Where was she? For multiple reasons. One, because there has to have been some sort of a odor, and two, bugs or something. Now, there was reports that prior, like saying, oh, she was in a freezer and she was still frozen in the trunk. That's highly impossible to still be for anything to be frozen in a trunk over 48 hours at most, no matter what the conditions are. But there's video footage of him in like a YouTube video with some kids. They're getting ready for a July 4th party and they're complaining about a smell. They're like, oh, it smells in the bathroom. And he's like, oh no, like I took a dump, like being silly. And then when they're leaving, one of the girls is like, dude, you have spiders everywhere. Like you need bug spray. Like this is super weird. So I'll also insert that in here because again, it's just like.
I smelled. I took a shit like 2 hours ago. I don't care. I just took a shit. Another one? Hot. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Yo, I had to go. Be careful. Just be careful. You need to get bug spray. There's little spiders everywhere, bro. Oh, for real?
Yeah, just cover the camera.
Yeah, can you? No, it's not the whole. Okay, one sec, chat. We're just leaving.
All the pieces are coming together, and although it is satisfying to an extent that we will know what happened to her, the why and the how are fucked up, and they're unnecessary on a level that is like beyond comprehension, and it's beyond words. Like I think it's been hard to record this video and put this information together because I didn't want to misspeak and I didn't want to put out like my own speculation, but every single goddamn day something has come out, and it's been horrible. I can't imagine what her family is going through at all. Her brother, anybody. The most talkative person in the world is speechless over this one. Things that interested me in the autopsy report, there were some linear cuts on one of her hands here, and I wonder if she, tried to block him or something like that. Again, severe decomposition won't tell us everything that happened, but that's just my own wonder. Now, the evidence they're saying they have so far is the CSAM sexual activity with him while she was 13. The photographs will not be presented but it is proof that there was a relationship between 13 and 14, which are the dates that they are going to be charging him with the lewd and lascivious acts of with a child, from her 13th birthday date to her 14th birthday date. There's also numerous text messages of them talking about sexual relationship, pregnancy, abortion, Plan B. Through March 2025, proved the defendant continued to manipulate the victim. And it says she messaged him, which really is a hard thing to even read, but also like her mindset is like she was getting a little bit older and realizing that this was not right. I'm sure she always knew this wasn't right, but I feel like, you know, she was turning 15 and she was like, wait a minute, like this is not right. One of the messages she sends him is, all we do is have sex and just hang out. Man, I want more than that for myself. What's interesting is these messages were obtained from his iCloud data and not from her phone. I don't know if they found her phone or if they everything was connected to his iCloud, because remember, he's the one who purchased the phone and was paying for the phone. So that's something to think about. One of the things I want to think about too is he was very obsessed with anime, death, gore, severed limbs, all this shit. It's in his music. The song was called Romantic Homicide. There's also a song with him and her, where she's talking about the red string theory, and she's talking about the relationship being severed. There's just a lot of conversation about death, the ending of things, the beginning of things, and he uses a lot of that in his imagery and in his interviews to try to sound enlightened, like, oh, it's the beginning of this project and that project and bullshit. And it's like, no, like, you're literally took information that a 13-year-old girl was saying to you and you started to create it and make it seem like it was your idea and your own persona. Using her voice in some of his music, I would love to know if his family is going to be cutting a check to Celeste's family, if it's proven that that in fact was her voice in those songs. There's a recording of her talking to him where he's like, I media trained you or something, because she makes like an accusation of like him R-wording kids, and now we know why she said that. But at the end of the clip, she says like, I made a song with him if any of you care. And so that
I personally don't.
Yo, I media trained you.
No, you didn't.
That's controversial.
It's controversial of raping kids.
Really good.
Okay,
It's
bye.
been a good one. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Mwah, 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 mwah. Oh my. Delete everything. Delete everything. Everything goes. Everything goes. Everything. Take that one off.
I took it off because I didn't go with the silver.
Season it. It's already seasoned, but it's Alfredo.
Seasoning.
Chat. Pray for his career, chat. Are we done? Are we?
We need to delete this.
Are we? Maz, can we delete all VODs? And then as soon as the stream ends, delete the stream too? Can we delete anything? You done for, bro? Y'all are not done? Now you gonna upstairs? Yo, wait.
Oh, look it. Answer that one. That's so mean if you don't answer
Which
that.
one? What's good to have a big fan mix by me? Yo, thank you, Mitochondria. Appreciate you.
I gotta stop with him if you even.
it's one of the songs, and I'd love to know again, like, is her family gonna get money from this? Like, does the money do anything? No, I mean, not even insinuating that, because what? But just, I'm just thinking about, like, you made money off of this girl's image and likeness is what my point is. Like, all of the videos that I had talked about, my first video of this was like, all the girls kind of look like Celeste. Really. You're using her voice. You're using some of her ideas, things that she said. You're wearing her fucking clothes after you killed her. You're wearing her bracelet. I can put a clip in here. You're wearing her fucking keychain. You're wearing her Hello Kitty hoodie. Like, you're wearing her shit. Like, you're a weirdo, you know? And that's one. Two, the family, who knew and who didn't. And what adults are going to be involved. The teacher that said that he knew this girl went missing. He knew that she was with this guy named David. He was a guy from the internet. A lot of information was given out in that recording that the teacher was shown to know. And is the teacher going to be pulled into this because adults around her knew this was going on and they tried to stop it. I know her parents had taken her phone at some point and then he bought her a phone, but was that enough? Did they feel like they were doing enough, right? You know, that's another thing I have questions about. His friends and family knew she was around, knew who she was, because when you see her and you hear the way she speaks and you see her mannerisms, like she was a child, there was no really way around that. 15, 16, 17-year-old could look a little bit older, but like not really when you start talking to them. But a 13-year-old is a child. So her being on a plane to London and all these different places, like what? It's just very odd to me. The other thing too is like there is a clip of her with his brother and his little sister behind backstage. It was determined that that was her. There's deleted user on Reddit, on Discord. It says deleted user, and people have figured out that that was Celeste. There was conversations about we might have a baby soon. Deleted user said it, or hey, deleted user, that's you at this concert, and then they're showing the photo of her backstage, which I also put in my last video. But in that same moment where she was backstage, not only did she sit with his family, but the little sister is holding Celeste's hand and leading her backstage. And then she's wearing the Hello Kitty clothing that was the last thing she was seen wearing in her last missing poster. And then his brother, is like right next to her. So it's like his sister, Celeste, and the brother. What the fuck, right? What the fuck? Because now the brother's coming out and saying like, oh, I don't fuck with pedophiles. Da, 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 da. It's like, hello? What do you mean you don't fuck with pedophiles? You were there when... All right. What did you think? Okay. Again, people are trying to act like they didn't know. People are trying to act like they weren't for it. People are trying to act like they weren't giving excuses. And so that's... I have a real problem with that because this is not okay. I mean, I am not even comfortable if the neighbor called me and said, hey, can you pick up our kid from school? Like, we live right next door. I would be uncomfortable with that. So I can't imagine just like having somebody's child in my possession and not being like, where's your mother and father? Like, why are you here? How old are you? Like, what's going on? Like, and it's not that fucking hard to Google somebody's information. So I don't know. I don't want to put blame on her parents or his parents. That's not what I want to do. And I don't want to be like, where are the adults? Because Lord knows I was outside doing Lord knows what with who knows who. But she was too present and too like around people for somebody not to ask a question is I guess my point. Another theory too, that I'm seeing a lot is the anime part. So he has this character that he created. Its name is Atami, and Atami is supposed to be this like person that's a murderer that also is the detective solving his own crimes. Now, sounds really funny, haha, until you start looking into Atami, and he was dressing like Atami, and Atami always had blood on him, and also just like some of the imagery was a lot of cutting of arms, cutting of legs. There's even that kind of animation of Atami with this girl in a bar, and even down to what she was wearing and where she was punctured is very similar to what happens to Celeste. Like, am I missing something here? Like, I don't think we're pulling at straws, because it used to feel like we're all pulling at straws at first, but now it's like, this motherfucker is crazy. Like, he's weird. He's fucking weird. Another theory too is there's a photo of David online where he's holding like it looks like a finger, like a prop. And so I looked into it, and it seems to be a replica prop of somebody named Sukuna's finger that you can purchase online as merchandise. Now, Sukuna is a character in an anime. It's called Jujutsu Kaisen. And there's a character named Royman Sukuna who's associated with severed fingers as part of the storyline. And so he's holding this like severed finger. I will try to figure out what date that photo was taken. But the background of the Y is interesting. So one of the things that it's supposed to symbolize is like power fragments. It says each finger contains a piece of Sukuna's power, and there's danger and corruption for anybody who interacts with them, risk being consumed or influenced by that power. So the character seeks out the fingers to gain strength, even if it destroys them. And there's a legacy of something dark. So the fingers are remnants of a past evil that continues affecting the past. all of this shit is weird to me. But what I want to say just overall is like, it doesn't prove anything, right? But it just, the symbolism of all these things is very fucking unsettling. Why was he obsessed with this type of stuff? Then I'm thinking, why did he leave Queens and go to Texas and be homeschooled in 7th grade? It feels like he's stuck in the 7th grade, and maybe that's why he was talking to younger kids. Again, none of this is excusable, but it's just from the perspective of a parent and from the perspective of a former child. What the fuck? But I'm going to continue to follow the case and keep y'all updated. This is probably going to be something I'm going to talk about quite a bit. And other than that, stay safe. Thank you for following, and don't be graceless.